Minnesota Vikings have officially parted ways with offensive line coach Chris Kuper. We're going to be talking about it on today's show and then also diving into who's going to be the next offensive line coach. And there's one key candidate that we'll dive into. And then also, if you guys could, hit that subscribe button for daily updates around your Minnesota Vikings. But always Kevin Siepman tweeting this out, giving us the news saying the Vikings are moving on from offensive line coach Chris Kuper, whose contract has expired. He was an original member of Kevin O'Connell's staff back in 2022, so that's at least one significant, albeit unsurprising, change to the offensive staff. And the Vikings, they should have made this move. The offensive line this past season was bad. Pressure rate allowed in the NFL, 39.8%. That was 24th in the league. The no blitz pressure rate allowed, 37.7%. That was 15th in the league. Yards before contact per running back rush, 1.2 yards. That was 15th in the league. And then the rush stuff rate was 16.2%, 16th in the league. So clearly the Vikings offensive line, we have known this under the Kevin O'Connell era, has not been living up to standard of a team that should go on and win playoff games in January. And, Chris Kuper getting a short end of the stick here. It's unfortunate for him, but I think it was the right move for the Vikings. But Christian Darrisaw, right after this happened, he posted this on his Instagram story, just a confused, kind of thoughtful emoji. So maybe Darrisaw and a couple of offensive linemen did not agree with this move, but I wholeheartedly agree with it, even though Darrisaw may have not, for the main reason that we have seen offensive linemen leave the Minnesota Vikings and go have great seasons. All three of these guys, all playing in the NFL playoffs and all having fantastic seasons. Garrett Bradbury with the Patriots, Ed Ingram with the Texans, and Ezra Cleveland, when they traded him last trade deadline, he played some good ball for the Jacksonville Jaguars, and their PFF grades are pretty damn good overall for Garrett Bradbury. One of the best of his career, 59.8. Again, not fantastic, but still better than what he's shown in Minnesota, better in the pass blocking department than Ed Ingram. I mean, we are all ready to chalk this guy up as a bust. His first season out of Minnesota, playing some great football, 71.5 overall grade, really solid in the run blocking department. Ezra Cleveland, you could play this guy at tackle, you could play this guy at guard, and he'll play good football for Jacksonville. So point being here is that we have seen Vikings offensive linemen play bad in Minnesota, go to other teams, and play good football. I think that's telling me, hey, clearly the Vikings aren't doing something right in terms of developing offensive linemen. And if you just show this offensive line on paper, Darrisaw, Jackson, Kelly, Fries, and O'Neal, that should be one of the better units in the league. Now, yes, injuries have played a massive factor into these five guys not being on the field. I think they only played 83 snaps this season altogether out there on the football field, but you got two good tackles. You got two good young guards. You had that veteran center, and I still think the Vikings offensive line has major potential to be dominant. I understand this season did not go well, but I'm not just going to have that 83 snap sample size just completely chalk it up where it's like, hey, these five offensive linemen the Vikings have are not good offensive linemen. Because Darrisaw still rehabbing from that torn ACL, MCL. Still think Brian O'Neill, one of the best right tackles in the league. Donovan Jackson showed a lot of promise, especially down the home stretch of the season. And Will Fries, credit to him, playing every snap for the Vikings offense this season. I think he'll continue to get better in the system. Now, the question mark becomes with Ryan Kelly. I have no idea if he's going to be back as a center next season for the Vikes. I mean, especially with this concussion issue that he's dealing with, I could very much see it being on the table that they just flat out cut him since the deal he signed, the 2-year contract, was necessarily just a 1-for-1 with a team option at the end of the first season. So he could be cut, but then that leaves a hole at the center position where I think the Vikings could potentially draft the guy. But still, you got your guards, you got your tackles. Most teams don't even have 3 of their 5 offensive linemen. The Vikings for sure heading into the next season have 4 of 5, and most likely will have all 5 when it's all said and done if they end up drafting a guy. But let me ask you guys this. Excited to hear your thoughts on this one. Who is your favorite Vikings offensive lineman of all time? For me, this is easy. I'm going with Phil Loadholt. Phil Loadholt was a mammoth of a human being. Absolutely loved what Loadholt brought to the table. A huge, big body. So I'll probably go Phil Loadholt. But you guys, let me know your thoughts down below. Who is your favorite Vikings offensive lineman of all time? Now we'll dive into who can replace Chris Kuper here in just a second. But before we do so, I do want to tell you guys about today's presenting sponsor, and that is PrizePicks. Now the big game is almost here, and there's no better way to cash in during America's biggest sporting event than PrizePicks, where it always feels good to be right. And since the big game is right around the corner, that also means it's your last chance to get into the football action before next season. So close the season outright with PrizePicks by getting $50 instantly in lineups after you put your first $5 lineup. You guys can also find your community on PrizePicks with the new social feeds feature. You can share PrizePicks with your friends and copy lineups from winners with a single click. Copy lineups you like or use them as inspiration for your own picks. You can even follow PrizePicks partners like us and tail or fade our picks with one click. Now, they also have a new feature called early payouts. If your player gets off to a hot start, you will now have the option to cash out those winnings before the game even finishes. So download the PrizePicks app today. Plug in promo code CONS. Get hooked up with $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CONS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. But massive shout out to PrizePicks for sponsoring today's show. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. All right, so who will replace Chris Kuper? Because obviously this is a huge need for this Vikings coaching staff. I mean, offensive line coaches, one, it's very rare to find a great one in the National Football League, but there is one good option. The Falcons will not be retaining their offensive line coach, Dwayne Ledford. Ledford, highly regarded for his work in Atlanta, is expected to have multiple suitors for his services. And Matthew Bergeron, a great offensive lineman for Atlanta, quote tweeted that tweet and just said SMH. And there's also a photo of Ledford. He's got some ties to Garrett Bradbury. I think back to his time at NC State. Bradbury sent Ledford like a bunch of Vikings gear, and there's a photo of Ledford wearing a bunch of Vikings gear out there. I couldn't find it for today's show, but there's some connection there. And also Darren Wolfson on Dwayne Ledford said he is certainly named to keep an eye out, or certainly keep an eye out on that name there. So there is some smoke around Ledford, and this would be a home run hire in my opinion. Even Alec Lewis is connected the Vikings to him after Atlanta actually ended up going with Bill Callahan. Also, if the Vikings could have landed Bill Callahan, we would have been probably going live here on the show throwing a party because he's probably the best offensive line coach the league has seen over the last 10 seasons. But he became Atlanta's offensive line coach. He also said it makes Falcons offensive line coach Dwayne Ledford one of the premium available coaches on the market for teams like the Vikings, highly respected in the industry. So this is a great name out there. It is very rarely where you fire your offensive line coach, and in that same cycle, you could get an immediate upgrade, but Ledford is just that. And the Falcons' offensive line this past season, they played some good football. Like Bijan Robinson had a fantastic year. Obviously, Bijan's an unreal talent. He's a blue-chip running back in the NFL, but they're 14th in the NFL according to PFF. And that was also with losing their starting center and Drew Dahlman. Caleb McGarry ended up missing the entire season due to the injury. Even Storm Norton had to miss the whole season due to the injury. Their second-string right tackle. So they were on a third-string right tackle, had to replace their center, and they were still 14th in the league. Us Vikings fans, we would freak out if you're able to get the 14th best offensive line in the league. So if you guys want the Vikes to hire Dwayne Ledford, just give me those skulls down below in the comments section if you guys want him to be rocking the purple and gold next season. And also with the young talent the Vikings have, I think this would be an absolute home run hire. Like Donovan Jackson, Will Fries, who turned those guys into potential Pro Bowl guards, in my opinion, because we've seen Will Fries with good offensive line coaches in Indianapolis play some great football. Donovan Jackson looked fantastic this season. You already got the stability at the tackles. This would be a big move for the Minnesota Vikings. Hopefully they're able to get it done. But if they do end up getting it done, we'll have a video for you guys ASAP here on the channel. So make sure you guys are subscribed. Appreciate all of you guys for tuning in to today's show. And we'll get on out of here. As always, let's go Vikes.